Well, welcome to Cooking with Heart for Diabetes Class 4. So wonderful to see everyone here too. So a big thank you to Genesis and Trinity Foundation and the Quad City Diabetes Association, because they support this, make this available to the community. And a big thank you to the diabetes educators that have helped with put this together and get the word out in the community. It's such a needed thing. So I want to kick off. We've got a guest here. And I'm going to highlight her, Ellen, and she's going to share some valuable information about what she does and what she can help you with. So let's see. Go ahead there. I think we're good. We can't hear you, though. I think you're unmuted, but I'm not hearing you.
Someone also said that the sound was muted tonight, or it was not coming through very well.
Is the sound not coming through? Are you hearing me, Ellen?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
There. Yes.
Okay.
We can hear
All
you.
right. Woohoo. Yeah. So my name is Ellen. I'm a dietitian / diabetes educator at Genesis. And as Teresa mentioned, the diabetes educators at Genesis and at Unity Point work together to help with this program. And we're thrilled that you folks are taking the time and putting this effort towards improving your health. What I'd like to talk about a little bit tonight is just a little bit about the progression of type 2 diabetes. When you're first diagnosed, you get a lot of information, and maybe you've seen an educator and you've got a diet and you've learned about medications if you're taking them. And so that's the beginning. And then we work to follow that plan that's been set up. We work on that plan and we hope that those blood sugars are improving. If not, we have to modify the plan. Part of the message that I wanted to get out tonight is that diabetes isn't just a one and done. It is a disease that continually can progress. And so what we're working on is the things we can do to help slow or stop that progression. So to kind of just talk for a second, diabetes is all about your insulin. When we eat food, our stomach and our intestinal tract break down all the foods into their component parts. The carbs break down into glucose or sugar. That sugar hits the bloodstream. Then the pancreas makes insulin, and the insulin's job is to move that sugar into the cells. So as diabetes goes along and you have some insulin resistance, that pancreas has to work really hard to make that amount of insulin that you need. And sometimes over time, the ability of the pancreas to make insulin can get less. That means we have to modify the plan of what we're doing to take care of it. And so part of the message that I wanted to reach out to you about tonight is that knowing that diabetes education and your care for your diabetes is not a one we figure it out and it's good for the rest of your life. we continue need to modify and update. And so you have a team to help work with you. So utilize that team, ask questions, begin to learn more and more about that diabetes. And if you're struggling with something, like for example, I had a patient who they were supposed to take their insulin at nighttime, and they just kept forgetting to take their long-acting insulin at nighttime. They would fall asleep before they'd get it taken. So we talked about, well, maybe you could take it at supper time instead of at bedtime, because then you'd remember it better. And so sometimes there's little tweaks like that we can do to help make everything work together better. So if you're struggling or if you're having any questions, work with your doctor or work with your educator. Because diabetes is very manageable, but sometimes we have to tweak the plan as we go along. Teresa, you got anything to add to that?
No, and that's a great setting the stage for today's talk about insulin. So thank you. Yes, Awesome.
Okay.
So Ellen is a diabetes educator with Genesis. So we have in this community some really gifted diabetes educators. So again, that second page in your binder has how you contact them and set up an appointment, and insurance in most cases going to reimburse, and the clinics will help you kind of get the referral that you need and get you set up insurance wise. So really, it's just important, even if things seem to be going really good, go in and check in with the diabetes educators. There's, new things coming out, new technologies too. Karen was sharing last week a little bit about some things. There's some new things on the horizon too to help, this is a lifestyle change, so make it easier. Okay, so there were a couple questions that I saw that you fabulous ones in the virtual were putting out there, and I wanted to make sure they were fully answered. And one of them was, do you want carbs to break down fast? Now, that first of all, the word fast is very relative. So for the most part, we don't want carbs to be breaking down fast, but let me explain. Because what really we want to happen is a blood sugar that is a slow rise. And that can happen. Now, if the carb is surrounded by other things like fiber, like protein, it's going to be a slow rise then. But if it's just carb and it's enriched, which we talked about last week, that it doesn't have any fiber, it's pretty much just going to be in your body very much like sugar. So it is going to then break down fast, kind of be just all alone and just spike up your blood sugar. So that's not good. So in general, carbs, we don't want to break down fast because we're really looking for a more even with the blood sugar, okay? Our body operates better, our hunger, our appetite, chronic inflammation, all much better when we have just a gradual incline and then decline. So I hope that answers that question. Then there was a question about fruit last time, a little discussion. I just want to make sure people are understanding with fruit. And this is something, though, I do recommend you talk with your diabetes educator. So, but fruit, whole fruit, most of the studies find, and these are when we say studies, we're talking populations, not individual. So there can always be exceptions for you. But as a population, we find that whole fruit, even in individuals with diabetes, is fine. And actually, there's some positive characteristics of whole fruit. Whole fruit is surrounded by fiber, okay? So naturally, so when you're eating the whole fruit, you're going to get that fiber that's going to slow the release. We're talking one fruit, not 5 fruit, okay? There's a big difference. The other things that are in fruit that really help, phytochemicals, and actually they're flavonoids. And the flavonoids help they improve insulin sensitivity. Now, not so much so you can sit down and again have 5 fruit, but we really find with the liver, there's some things that happen with the flavonoids that are really positive. So, you're going to be missing out on some of the benefit if you just eliminate fruit because you're scared that it's going to, spike your blood sugar. So also the dose, kind of like I'm alluding to, how much you're having is going to influence it. And then we find that for the most part, chewing really does help. Now, I'm not going to recommend you chew 20 times each bite. But the idea is the way we normally for millions of years have eaten food, we have slowed down intentionally eaten food and chewed. And so when we get to things like fruit juice, that's just like guzzle. And, we're in 5 seconds, we can have the equivalent of 2 fruits. So that's completely different. So I don't want you to be scared of fruit. There are individual differences. So I do want to also encourage you that you talk with your diabetes educator because you might be one of those that really is influenced by even whole fruit. But I don't want you to be scared of it. I don't want you to be eliminating it. Okay. All right. Well, I have a guest here that I would love to come up here and introduce themselves. So I'll just let her share a little bit about herself. Where would you like me to stand? Kind of right here. So the virtual, I kind of set it up here with a cutting board so the virtual can see you there.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gail, and I'm a graduate of this program. And I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 9 years ago. But the doctor I was seeing at the time didn't even recommend diabetic education for me. It wasn't until 2020 when I got a new doctor that the doctor said, you should try diabetes education. And it was fabulous. And it was through that class that they offered time with a nutritionist, diabetic nutritionist, and she recommended these cooking with heart classes. And the first one I took was actually Cooking with Heart for cancer patients because the diabetes class was kind of far out there. So I took the Cooking with Heart for cancer patients, and it was fabulous. I was hooked. My favorite part of that was eating the rainbow, talk about phytochemicals.
Yes.
That was just so much fun. And when I made one of Teresa's dishes, the bibimbap, and seeing after you steam the vegetables and you see all those beautiful bright colors in the bowl, you just want to eat it, and it makes it taste so much better. But anyway, so I took the cancer, I took the heart because my husband was having cardiac issues. I took the diabetes, and I took the foundational class twice. The second time, I got my husband to take it with me, and the two of us have changed our eating styles. We are now going more plant-based, whole grains. We're not perfect. I still like my bagel with cream cheese sometimes, but as long as I don't do it, as long as I'm not at Brugger's every week, I'm good. But it takes time. We've been doing this for 2 years now, and it's like baby steps. Pick one recipe and change it at a time. And then we've gotten to the point where we have worked in almost all of the recipes from these classes into our regular routine. And all I can say is it's a journey, but it can be a journey that's a lot of fun. And I still meet with my diabetic nutritionist. My insurance covers it. I think it's 3 or 4 times a year. And she's always got something new to share with me. So I encourage you to stay with it and give the other classes a go, because you're always learning something a little different in all the classes.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Yes, yes. So awesome. So yeah, so Gail, she's somebody who's been where you are. And so she's just, like she said, just keep with it. It's a journey, and just integrate things in slowly. Okay. You have to be faced with eating 3 times plus a day. We've got advertising, marketing, it's all legal. And even if they're, pushing things that aren't going to keep us healthy. So, you've got a lot on your plate. So I know you want this today, but you'll get there. And I'm working on it too. So it's a journey, just like Gail said. So awesome. Okay, what I'd love to do now is go over label reading. We really didn't have a chance. I know I pack a lot. So if you guys at home could just dash to your kitchen and grab something that's in a package, a product. Okay, so I'll give you guys like 10 seconds to go to your kitchen and grab something with some type of label on it so you can go through with us. So, okay. So label reading is a skill, and I want you to be ninja good at it in the near future. It will take some time investment in looking at the products in your cupboards and at the grocery store. You want to build in 10, 20 minutes to the grocery store. Okay, I say 10 minutes is a baby step. Most people come back and say, Teresa, I was there like half an hour extra. So it just takes time to compare and look at them on the shelf. So there's 5 things. So hopefully everybody's got their product there at home. So there's 5 things I pay attention to. I want to keep it simple and doable. So first, the front of the package, ignore. Okay, that is a lot of thousands of dollars went into it, and focus groups, and they're really trying to get you put it in your cart. And they're pretty good at it. Sometimes they even get me. So just ignore that. You want to go to the back to the nutritional facts and the ingredients list. So the nutritional facts, most of it you want to ignore just because it's overwhelming. And I want you to pay attention to the most important parts. First thing is serving size. So look at the serving size, because you want to say, well, I'm going to eat this much approximately. I don't encourage weighing or getting out measuring, but have a feel, I'm approximately going to. Or do I need to up it half again or twice or decrease it? So just get a feel for the context there. Then I want you to hop to saturated fat. Ignore the calories, ignore the total fat. It's the saturated fat that affects our health in the most profound ways. So saturated fat, you want over a whole day for all your beverages, snacks, and meals, no more than 10 grams. everything together for a day. Okay. Now, if you're super duper training for an Ironman, then see me because it's going to go up a little bit. But for most of us, it's right at 10 grams for the full day of saturated fat. That will keep you good. So just keep that in mind. There's not many numbers I'm going to ask you to memorize, but that one is one. Skip the cholesterol. Go to the sodium. Okay. Sodium's an important one. Blood pressure, 47% of Americans have high blood pressure. That's basically half. Adults, that's adults, meaning 20 and over. Okay. So what is the number? Well, if you have high blood pressure, on high blood pressure meds, 1,500 for the whole day, not for the product. Now, that's kind of hard to go, well, how much should I have in this product, Teresa? Well, we kind of say a good guide to give you a ballpark stab is look at the calories, and you want almost a 1-for-1 calories and sodium. I don't care for the calories, but most of us around 1,500 to 1,800 calories a day is how much we're going to be intaking. So if we keep the sodium right there, then we're probably good. So you don't have to be exact. If your calories are 240 and your sodium's 320, you're probably good, okay? But if your sodium is 560, 890, oof, that's too high. Okay, so sodium. Now, if you have normal blood pressure, then we say 2,300. Now, that's a weird number. These are the only numbers I'll ask you to memorize. 2,300 for the full day. So when you get items that like are 700 and 900, you need to like kind of step back and say, is there a way that I could do with less or substitute? Okay, now I do occasionally eat things that are that high, but I know and I cut back. So it's, you got to really keep track, guys, because it adds up. And people will say, well, Teresa, I watch my salt and, I don't even have it at the table. I'm telling you still, 2/3 of what we're intaking is in the processed products, anything with a package, and 1/3 is at the table. So you really need to pay attention to both, guys. So I don't mean no, and you'll see today we'll use a dash of salt. It's not evil. It's just we've way overdone it. Okay, so then I jump down to, I usually jump to sugar maybe. Okay, and I say maybe because a lot of us like numbers. We like to look at that sugar number. I don't want to get too obsessed with that, but let me give you some context there. So for a product, I will consider it higher sugar if it's 10 grams or more. Okay, added. Okay, not natural, okay? So natural, we're gonna get milks and dairies and, those are okay, that's lactose that's in there. So, but the added sugar, no more than 10 grams. Okay, remember, I think I briefly mentioned last week, there's 4 grams in a teaspoon of carb sugar. So that's basically 2.5 teaspoons. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you start adding it up, it is. And there's 61 plus names for sugar on the label. Okay, so it is not going to be written as plain sugar. It's good. If you think it's sugar, it's sugar. Okay, honey, agave, all those are sugar, guys, because that's how your blood sugar. Now, some of them have some phytochemicals that are great to go along with, but they're still going to raise your blood sugar. So the other thing is, the recommendations, just to give you kind of a general recommendations, are no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar for females and 9 for males for a whole day. Okay, so if you do the math, that 6 times 4 is 24 grams when you're reading your labels of added sugar of everything, even the oatmeal and all that. And then for men, that's 9 times 4, that's 36. Okay. So that's a good guide to use. Okay. So then I usually just jump down to the ingredients list. Now, ingredients are listed by weight first. It's not like how we do recipes here in the US where we measure. It's not that. It's weight. So the most weighing one is first. So water, you can see on some of them. So the top 3 ingredients are really go a lot in that product. So really pay attention to the top 3. Usually I look for sugar in the top 3 to 5. If it's in the top 3 to 5, I'm like, oh, this is a lot of sugar I'm eating. If I know it was, then okay. So, but if I was surprised, whoosh, Okay. I don't usually read the whole complete list. I just kind of capitalize there because those are what most of the product is. I do try and look to see if there's some whole grain there. I haven't really mentioned fiber. It's really hard. Honestly, in packaged good manufacturers could care less about fiber for the most part, like Mother Nature, whole intact fiber. They do add some, but it's usually kind of what we call stripped down fiber. So I'm going to be looking for things like oats. Let me see. I have a list here. Let me read it off because it gets whole grain that can drive you crazy. Rolled oats, brown rice, 100% whole grain, whole grain millet, whole grain bulgur, buckwheat, amaranth, stone ground polenta. Polenta's tricky, but if you love polenta, I can talk to you about it because polenta is such a cool thing. White whole wheat flour, and then whole wheat flour. There's a new grain, kind of new, that's white whole wheat. It's a whole grain. Okay, so most of the time, if it's a packaged product, we aren't going to count it as a good source of carb with fiber. Okay, it's just not going to be there. The manufacturers aren't going to do it. It's just it cuts into their cost and their shelf life too much. So okay, so that's it. That's all I look at, guys. Yeah, Christine.
Is sugar that listed added sugar?
Yes,
So
it will be added.
There's a type of box of raisins.
Yes.
So sugar is not listed as the added sugar.
But no, it'll say added because there's usually two breakdowns for sugar now. There's a total and then there's an added. Now there's a few labels that haven't like upgraded to that. So yeah, very good point. There are some labels that don't have the added. It is a nice thing that just happened in the last 5 years. But I thought they all were supposed to by now, but I don't know. Some of them don't. So good question. Yeah, no, please ask those questions. Do we have any questions here? I see something here. Let's see. The chat I'm seeing. Miguel said he heard a saying that really resonated with me. Food is medicine. Yes, yes. And we have somebody that'd like to know more about polenta. Okay, so I will email you. You want to get the not degerminated, okay? And you're probably going to have to get that from Bob's Red Mill because the stone ground on the shelves in the small print, they will tell you it's degerminated. It's stripped some, even though it's nice yellow. So, but I love polenta, and you can get it from Bob's Red Mill. So, let's see. And you just move to Ridgecrest and they serve it. Okay, it's probably going to be not the stone ground, but still it has some value. Polenta does if it's made from cornmeal. It has some value. So we want to surround that meal though with some other vegetables, fiber sources, Sheila. Okay. I know I want to do something else too. Oh, I wanted everybody to share. Okay, so we've had a week. So, and what kind of learnings, okay? I like to call it learnings because we label things success, failure, and that doesn't, most of the gems actually happen when things go a little different than planned. So I want us to be aware of what works for us and what doesn't. This is a journey. So what learnings, what did people try out and what did you find out? Even if it didn't happen, that's a learning. So please send me in the chat or take yourself off mute and share what you learned this last week. So anybody here?
Make cauliflower salad.
Did you make that at home, Mark? Okay, Mark made the cauliflower salad. Ooh. You're not a cauliflower. Oh, and that's not even steamed. So it's like raw. That's awesome. Yes. Other learnings. Reading labels, looking at products, conversations, browsing the binder, and learning some things.
I'm looking at things more in like the whole food idea. I live alone, so it was more easy stuff. And so now it's like I look at things like, okay, that's packaged small. I can grab that for me, So that's those things that I'm
Awesome. So Joanne is looking at Whole Foods and looking at things for her being the only person in the household. So she's looking at things from that perspective, that filter. So awesome. Yes, I love hearing Whole Foods. That's very key. Other things. Let's see. I'm watching for you guys there. So I have, this is an idea, because when we're talking about behavior change, which is what you're doing, you're trying to change your behaviors to positive lifestyles. And it's really tough stuff, guys. You're here, you're going to make it. I'm here to encourage you and keep on the journey. Something that might help, and this was recommended actually by Dr. Wrongman. He's my favorite podcaster in the health world. And he does this with his patients. He's a GP in the UK, and he's all about lifestyle medicine. And he recommends that they get just a small glass jar, and then some, these are coffee beans, guys, that's what they are. So, and just put it, you don't have to put it in the kitchen. I know you think it, put it in the kitchen, but you can put it anywhere and put the beans to fill it. But every time you do a change in your behavior, a positive lifestyle change, you put a bean in there and you start to see it growing. So like for now, we've got beads in there because you came to class. This is your second class. You've looked at the binder. You started to think and have conversations with other people about this. Maybe you tried a recipe like Mark. So maybe you started to just look at the grocery store more closely. Those are all things. I want you to fill this up because it is hard, but it's gradual. And over time, you'll fill this up multiple times over. And I want you to know that. That's what it takes. Tiny baby steps that add up to a lot. So this is an idea to do to track things. So because it is hard stuff, and it really helps to have that kind of visible encouragement. So, okay, Miguel, when I made the brownies, it was a little bit tough to blend the ingredients. Yes. A bit of water. Yes, you can do that. I did the dry first and then the liquid. Maybe. Okay. Yeah. There's a learning. Like it, Miguel. He's thinking about next time he makes the brownies, putting the liquid first. Yes, I do find, especially, the blender, if the blade's on the bottom, putting the liquid and kind of going quick. So, but yeah, you're always welcome to add a little more water. Okay. Okay. Awesome. So yes, great learning there. So lots of learnings, guys. Just keep it up. Okay, I wanted to talk about one more thing before we jump into our topic tonight, the snacks, and that is procrastination. So, I'm sure you've never encountered it, so, but procrastination happens, and it happens, and it's very common with lifestyle changes, okay? And we talked about some of the things you want to do, baby steps, self-compassion, have fun, and have an open mind, and those work. But I also want you to understand just a little bit. Let's kind of take a full perspective of procrastination. So procrastination really evolves from two things. Basically, we're human, and we're going to procrastinate because we do things if they have a reward. Okay, we're pretty simple, just like mice. So we need that carrot there. So a lot of things our history will do because, even as simple, guys, have you ever stayed in bed about, 5-15 minutes longer because it's been cold to get out, or you haven't wanted to get going? Well, that's because you're comfortable. Okay, there's no reward in getting up and cold. Okay, so that's a natural thing to just stay snuggled in bed. Okay, so we gotta build in some reward, and we gotta also become, what I find too is just becoming aware of what you thought was a reward and what you really want as a reward. And we're gonna kind of tackle that next week a little more so, but we think some of these foods that we're eating are really helping us, and they taste delicious every bite. Well, when you start to be aware, some of them aren't as delicious as you thought because you're mindlessly eating them, okay? Because we can't help ourselves. And here's the other thing. If you were to eat a big piece of cake, how's your blood sugar and appetite going to be an hour later? Yeah, a little cranky I'll be, okay? So, just starting to recognize those associations. A lot of times we just kind of push them off and ignore them, but start being aware. Is this really paying off for me? I really like having my energy and not being hangry. So, start noticing those things. So the other part of procrastination is pain. We avoid pain. Okay. And pain doesn't have to be, okay, I talked about the cold. We're avoiding the cold, but it could be uncomfortable feelings, unknown. Okay. I've got the big one that everybody, I have to break this belief that healthy food is blah. Okay. People aren't even going to talk to me, some people, because they have so ingrained this idea that I'm taking away something from them. And the thing is, you know what? There's wonderful foods, just like Mark said, he likes this salad and it has cauliflower and he never would have known. So, but he had an open mind. And so there are actually lots of things, I promise you, I can guarantee, I can put my life on the line that you will love. You just got to have an open mind and experiment. And it may not be all the things that you taste in this class, but I'm hoping that you get started on the journey and that some of these you can at least tweak to make so much better that you look forward to them. And that's where I am in my life. I actually make food not because it's just medicine, but because I look forward to it. I actually look forward to my lunch full of vegetables because it's delicious, not because I have to eat this, okay, because I want to be healthy. I want to, no. So yes, I want to be healthy, but I want to find on that Venn diagram the crossover of foods that are delicious and also are going to give me the health that I want. And also for many of you, it needs to be quick. It needs to be things that you can make, like Joanne, you said you're making for one. So, you've got some Venn diagram crossover there that we're going to look for. We can find it, guys. I promise you, we can. And once you believe you can, you're going to go out there. Now, there's going to be times when things are going to mess up and burn and you're going to get the wrong product. And that's part of it. So that's part of the pain that we're trying to avoid. But I'm here to tell you, just keep with it. Have self-compassion. And ask yourself, when you catch yourself avoiding doing something, do you need to break it up into smaller steps? Or is there something uncomfortable that you're avoiding? Some type of pain. Most all our behaviors can be tracked to either reward or pain. So I'm here to say it's okay if you're avoiding something that you really want to do. There's probably a really good reason. So you'll figure it out. I trust that you'll figure it out. Okay, so we're going to hop on over then to today's information about insulin. So, okay, here we go. Share. What did I do? I took all my notes there. Okay, so the ins and outs of snacking. So, okay, now I want to go into what happens with food in your body and blood sugar. So this is really key to understanding. We're talking about a meal and a snack and a mini meal. So here we have a person eating an apple. So the apple, they eat it, they chew it, goes down the esophagus into the stomach, and then the intestines. And at this point, it's changed a little bit. It's kind of applesauce at that point. So, and then when it's in the intestines, it'll stay there for a little bit, and your body is going to break it down to what we call building blocks. And the building blocks have to do with the 3 macronutrients: carb, protein, and fat. Alcohol's kind of in there, but we'll ignore that for now. So carbs are going to break down to what we talked about last week, the glucose, possibly the fructose. So, and then your proteins break down to amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks. And then fats break down to fatty acids. So, and this is because in order to cross into your bloodstream, because it actually kind of like just invisibly walks through your intestines. It's a pretty cool process. It's wow, it's amazing. But it then goes into the bloodstream. So when we're talking about your blood sugar, it's the carbs that are broken down to these building blocks that have then been allowed to cross through over into the bloodstream. And so they're not yet in the cells. So glucose needs insulin to unlock the cell. That's the key to unlock the cell. There is nothing at all that you can eat that can unlock that cell to get the glucose into the cell, because your cell needs the glucose for energy. That's the primary source of energy, especially the brain. What happens is insulin kind of locks on the surface of the cell. It kind of really just goes right in there. It's a very cool process, and then unlocks it and glucose can enter. So it's this wonderful process of balance that you should have enough insulin in the bloodstream to unlock the cells for the glucose to enter in and keep your blood sugars in this wonderful kind of balance. So it's really vital that we have this balance. We need the glucose for energy. So glucose isn't bad. And insulin, we need to unlock the cells. So insulin isn't bad. So let's move into a little more in the relationship of glucose, blood sugar, and insulin, and how things can get out of whack. So when we talk about the role of insulin, let's think of insulin as a knife, okay? And so it'll make sense. So just use your imagination right now. So there are three important things that we're going to kind of break down characteristics of insulin. So we're going to look at how big is your insulin knife, so your knife, how sharp is your insulin knife, and then how much work are you asking your insulin knife to do? And this will help really clear up this whole idea of spacing and how much food you want to be eating. So how big, the first one there, has to do with how much insulin you have, okay? So if you have a bigger knife, you have more insulin. And you have your most insulin, no surprise, when you're born, okay? So that's when we have the most. And as you age, it's just there's nothing even super healthy, it's gonna decrease the amount that you have. So now when you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, typically we're gonna say you're about at half what you were when you were born. So you still can do a lot. So if we've got a big knife, we're going to smaller knives over time, okay? So can let's say you have a 16-inch knife at birth, and then we go down to a 10-inch knife later in adult life. And when you're diagnosed with diabetes, can you cut food? Can you cut your glucose up? Yes, it's gonna work. So you're still good to go. So it's gonna work really well. Now, if you've had diabetes for a lot longer, then your knife is probably shrunk down even more. So you might be down to, more like a 6-inch or even a paring knife. Now, can you still cut food? Yeah, you can still cut food with these. So you have to follow some other principles, but you still can use that insulin very effectively. But if you're down to a box knife, okay, not very big. That's going to take a long time, and your blood sugars probably get too high by the time the insulin can do its work. So that might be where you need some help with medication or maybe insulin. So, when that knife gets too small, we're going to need some help. Okay, so these are the different kind of things that affect how much insulin you have available. Okay, so sharpness is another characteristic, and this is related, let's just call this your insulin resistance characteristic. So how sharp it is. So if your insulin is dull, your knife is dull, even if you have a 16-inch one, are you going to be able to cut up your food quick? You're going to have to implement some of these other principles in order to helpfully do it. So, and if you have more like a 6-inch knife that's dull, it's going to get tough then, okay? So you can still cut up your food with this insulin knife when it's dull, but that's what's happening with insulin resistance. You have insulin, but it's just not capable of doing its job as well. The receptors aren't really opening up clearly. Those unlocking isn't the relationship it's get the keys getting jammed in there. So something's going on. So that the insulin you have is just really not as effective. So you've got insulin, but you've got that dull knife. So these are the things that you see on the screen that really can affect it. Again, age is going to be in there. We can't do anything about that. Now, inactivity is a big one, guys. A big one. If you want to see a marked change in your insulin and your blood sugars, movement, medications. Okay, we can't always do something about those, but be aware and talk with your physician or your provider if you're really wanting to back down on your medications for diabetes, because there are sometimes some options. Stress, stress has cortisol, and that's going to affect blood sugars, guys. So if you're not, we're going to have stress. There's nobody who has, and I don't want a life that isn't stress, have some, okay? But I have stress management activities built in, okay? Because I know I don't want the cortisol affecting my blood pressure and my blood sugar. So illness when you're sick. A lot of people have already realized this. When they're sick, their blood sugars go wacko. A diet high in land-based animal protein. Okay, that might be a surprise, but we do find that blood sugar control and insulin resistance is affected. A diet low in fiber. Okay, and one of the key foods we're going to play around with today actually is very effective for insulin resistance. And then weight gain. When we gain more weight, it just becomes, our insulin doesn't work as well. So let's try some scenarios and think through. Would a back injury affect a person's insulin resistance? Yeah. The sharpness of their knife, they'd be duller because you've got physical and emotional pain very likely. And possibly meds. So again, always check with your meds. Would COVID or the loss of a family member or a job loss affect a person's insulin resistance? Yeah, those things do. A lot of stress. Can someone working longer hours regularly in a demanding job mentally affect their insulin resistance negatively? Yes. So these are reasons I'm giving you permission to take care of yourself, okay? You have emotional pain and stress. Even if you love what you're doing, even if you tell yourself you have to do this, it's affecting you. Okay, so last one is, how much work are you asking yourself to do? Your knife to do. So how much food are you giving it at a sitting? Okay, the more food, then you're asking, you're gonna have more than calories. And even if the carb is somewhat in proportion, if you're eating more calories than you need, then your body is going to convert those excess calories to, it has a couple choices, okay? And it can go all different ways. So having a large meal at one sitting isn't going to be effective. Think about it. If you have less insulin and your insulin isn't working so well, okay? So, and especially if that meal has a high carb load without fiber. So, but if you spread your food throughout the day, say 4 to 6 hours between meals, so that your body has time to process and use the insulin slowly with slow release that you have, and snacks no closer than 2 hours, that gives your body typically the insulin that you do have and the working shape it is in enough time. Now, also, if you have fiber at every meal, that slows the release of glucose, and that's going to help. So, okay, so let's review. So, how long is your knife? So, how much insulin? What's your age? What's your diagnosis? How long have you had diabetes? Those things are going to affect how long is your blade. So then how sharp is your knife is the insulin resistance. How well is it going to cut up food with very little effort? So all those things, illness, exercise, medication, stress, all those things affect that. And then how much work are you spacing out and giving your body time to do its work and not giving it too much at one sitting? Those all are really helpful for managing your blood sugars. Okay. So now those of you that were here at first, you kind of got to see, but a really long knife, you can have knives out this long. If you've got a knife like that long when you're born, you have no problem with blood sugar control. But as you age, it's going to get shorter and shorter. And by the time you get diagnosis of diabetes, it might be to this. You still can cut, but it's a lot shorter. And then when you get to this, it's just a lot. 4 inches is not a lot of blade to go with. And this, you're not going to work. It's not going to work with this. You're going to need help for sure with this. So, and then how sharp it is, no matter how long it is really going to affect insulin resistance. So keep those in mind when you're thinking about spacing out your meals, 4 to 6 hours. You've got insulin, unless you're injecting it. Then allow your body to work, get a chance to work that. Okay. So those are some things that you can do. Okay. So, time to get to work. So I'm going to get the quinoa going. I know we're getting short on time here, but I want to get the quinoa going. So quinoa, it's Quinoa. I'm going to boil the water here, a cup of water. And the quinoa I have here, I rinsed it. It's a seed. It's actually technically a seed. But it's got the 3 layers, so we call it a whole grain. And here's what it looks like. You want to rinse it in like a fine sieve because it has usually a powdery, you may not notice. And even if it says it's rinsed, I always rinse it because it's saponin. It's not toxic or anything. It's a natural, but it can be a soapy taste. So it's just habit. I always rinse it cold water. So we're going to let that for about 12 minutes. We're going to let that boil there. So I'm going to put this timer on. I do find for the most part, even when I follow directions, it makes more quinoa than it says. It always seems to. I just use it in this recipe, but it calls for a cup and a half. It's usually more than a cup and a half. And it's a half cup of quinoa rinsed and a cup of water. So quinoa is great. It's super high in protein and fiber. It actually, it's one of the highest protein grains. It's from the Aztec culture. They grew it in hard to grow places like 3,000 plus years ago. And they actually saved it, a lot of it, grew it and saved it for the warriors because they found it was almost a complete food for the warriors and they were stronger and able to go longer. So it really is a powerful food. So it's packed with a lot of things. I make it all the time instead of brown rice because brown rice takes 40 minutes unless you get the Success brown rice and the parboil. So it's already boiling. We're going to take that down. So this is real easy to make the burgers. So the quinoa burgers are really handy dandy because you can make them small for a snack or you can make them bigger for a meal. So, and then you don't even need a blender for this. So I'm just going to take my can of pinto beans, no added salt. Here, pinto means paint in Spanish. And pinto beans actually have more fiber than the quinoa in them, okay? So tons of fiber, tons of protein. Pinto beans actually are swirly colored when they're raw. They're beautiful. So when they're soaked, they kind of get all the same color. So we're just going to mash, and you don't need to get a perfect mash. Leave some of the beans pieces, that's fine. But just get a good little workout and mash them. Okay, while I'm mashing these and throw it together, I'm going to ask a favor because movement is so important, guys, for health. And I mean, for controlling blood sugars, it's like the secret hack. So they did a study and people sat for 8 hours. And then they had another group that just stood up and sat down every 30 minutes. They didn't do anything like run around the room or anything or go up and down the stairs. It just stood up and down. And guess what? The group that 30 minutes stood up and down, their blood sugars were 11% better. 11% better. So while I'm throwing this together, I just ask that you stand up and do a stretch. So, okay, you guys are welcome to at home. You're signaling your body to not go into sleep, kind of lazy blood sugar mode. Oh, and I'm going to change my cameras here. So, okay. So you guys can see a little bit better. Okay. Okay, there we go. So you can see me mashing. Okay, so we're just going to throw it together. When I get the quinoa done, I'm going to throw in here the seasoning. We're going to make a flax seed egg. So a flax instead of egg, and eggs aren't like evil and horrible. Actually, the yolk has a lot of great stuff in it, but just as an alternative, and a flax seed is a whole food. We're going to grind it up because you can't chop it. It's gonna go through you if you use the seeds. It will still emulsify. I don't ever buy flaxseed ground. Be careful. I did this mistakenly. I get why they're doing that, but don't do that, okay? You can use a coffee grinder to grind your flaxseed. Most people have that around. It's okay if you're switching between coffee and flaxseed. But flaxseed is a whole food. It's a seed. So it's got that germ and that healthy oil. So you want to keep it in the freezer. I keep mine in the freezer all the time. Some of the literature will say you can keep it 2 weeks in the refrigerator or a month. I'm like, just keep it in the freezer, okay? Because the oil, once it turns rancid, it almost starts to harm you. I don't want to, scare you, but it's like once it's rancid, it's like not even not doing its job. It's actually like gonna break down much easier. So usually you can taste it, the oil, but let's just keep it in the freezer. So what I do is I will grind up like a week's worth and put that in my little personal blender thing and put it in the freezer. And then I have the whole seed still in the freezer. So that's how I do it. But I'm just going to add the water here and let it sit and let it emulsify. And that's going to be like an egg. So, but we've got lots of seasonings. And even with the seasonings, guys, here, the quinoa burgers could use more seasoning, okay? So I want you to understand, as you take out salt and sugar of food, you gotta really go crazy with the seasonings, okay? So you even add more than what this recipe calls for. So a lot of them will do things like Worcestershire sauce, or you can add a little shake of Tabasco if you want to. There's the regular Tabasco, not the Louisiana hot sauce, but the Tabasco is lower sodium. So the Louisiana's really high in sodium. So start thinking about what seasonings. I would probably go crazy with the smoky paprika. That's what I love. So start thinking about that because you're going to find some things that are going to be a little under seasoned. So, and this might be one. So, but I want you to be creative. In the recipe too, I noticed there was kind of a mistake. There was 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil at the end. You don't need that. That is in case you decide to cook it in a skillet instead of doing it in the oven. And they do fine in the oven. So, I just don't see the reason why I do it in skillet. So it's just real easy to do it in the oven. So I'm mixing this in. I'll let the quinoa, I'm going to let the quinoa is almost done, actually. It's really close. I'm going to let this sit. I'll finish mixing that and show you the patties. We have some finished ones. Did you put them in? I put them in. Okay, so we've got some finished ones. We'll pull out in like 5 minutes to show you. But again, you can freeze these. They're super easy to freeze. And then you can use it, you can use 2 for a meal, 1 for a snack, make them, whatever size. So I just want you to have an easy to use kind of plant-based burger. So, and you know, you can add tomatoes to it, lettuce. You can create, you can add some avocado on there, hummus to add flavor on it. So there's all kinds of things. So, okay, sweet potato. So sweet potato here, real quick. Sweet potato is the secret one that it has fiber all throughout, even the flesh. So yes, we're going to eat the skin because a lot of the phytochemicals, remember, plants defenses defend against pests and radiation and all the things that they have to grow that are out in the wild. So a lot of them are concentrated on the outer part. So we still want to eat the skin, but there is fiber still throughout in a sweet potato. The other thing is sweet potato has a hormone that helps with the protein adipocin or something like that, which helps with insulin resistance. So it's really great for, we find that several hours later that blood sugar, we see positive effects for blood sugar. So what I want to show you right now is this is about 2 servings. Okay, one is going to be, I make it, it's a great one to make in bulk and use throughout the week. You can just reheat it up and get it. It will attract some moisture as it sits in the container. So it'll get soggy, but you just need to put it back in the air fryer or the oven to get it roasted again. So, but when you cut it, usually I'll cut it in half because a sweet potato is kind of dense. So you kind of struggle with it a little bit. You want a sharp knife. So I want to get that flat edge as soon as possible. So then I'm going to cut down like this using my flat edge. Now I've got these pieces and now I can cut my cubes. They're even. So I know a lot of people are just going to go chop, 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 chop. It's a little dangerous, I'm just saying. So, because it's a little more dense. So this is a way how we get even pieces there, okay? And then we put them on a baking sheet with parchment. Now these are already roasted, so these shrunk down, but you can see I spread them out, okay? We don't want to just pile them on, and a lot of Pinterest photos will have all these roasted veggies piled. That's not how you roast. You steam that way, but you don't roast. You got to spread them out a little bit. And these are just great to snack on or to use in bowls and wraps and whatever you want. So roasted sweet potatoes are great to add as a veggie. So okay, we're gonna heat these up so we can test them out here. So I'm gonna put that in, and then the sauce. The other thing is for a snack, you want to have 2 food groups. It's ideal to have 2 food groups for your body to keep the blood sugar control, even if you don't have diabetes. It's just a good way to combine a whole vegetable or fruit with a protein or a dairy or something. It just works so much better. So what I've done with this is I have a sauce or a dip with the non-fat Greek yogurt. So, and we just made it here, but just adding a little bit of Dijon mustard and garlic powder really jazzes it up, the non-fat Greek yogurt. So this is, and it's protein. So I want you to have a 1/4 cup and dip the sweet potatoes in, because that will really do wonderful for your blood sugar. It will be a much more even, and your appetite will be great too, because you'll get the combination. So very easy to make, and you can also put this on top of the burger too. So, but we're gonna taste that. So let's see, I'm gonna give this to you to mix in there. Yeah. So here's some gloves. Oh, you got some. You have some prepared. There you go. I can mix that. So we'll have that here. So the other thing is the Greek yogurt is great for the snacks. The last thing I want to show you are the snacks that we have. Ooh, awesome. I'll mix that together. The snacks that we have. So I've got some great ones here. So here we go. So what I did here was Ta-da. Oh, wait, you guys are over here. I keep wanting to do that. So, ta-da. So I mixed 2 tablespoons of peanut butter with 1 tablespoon of the non-fat Greek yogurt. Couple things there. Peanut butter is pretty high fat. You know, it's got a lot of great stuff in there, but it's pretty high fat. And so we bring that down with the non-fat Greek yogurt. We also, when you mix that, you make the peanut butter easier to spread. So to stick to the bananas. So, and it's a great flavor, honestly. So that's something you can think about for the peanut butter. Peanut butter powder is another consideration to do because that will take out the fat. So, but just spreading it between a 6-inch banana, you know, dividing it up, it's a great snack. So we'll get to try this tonight. And then a couple more fun snacks. Let's see here. So there we go. We've got hummus with just vegetable sticks. So this is, you can put this in the refrigerator for 4 or 5 days, guys, and just grab one and go. And I'll tell you, everybody's going to be like jealous because they're going to be like, what do you have there? Oh, that's so cute. And these are great. They're super inexpensive to get the mason jars and then the plastic lids. And this is great for like, instead of baggies and using baggies that you toss out, I a lot of times just, it's pretty and it's fun. So you can grab and go with these. So that's one way to store.
Store-bought those?
It is. So Mark asked about store-bought. Homemade would be better for the oil because I know the source. I know it's extra virgin. It'd be probably less oil and less salt. However, some things you have to balance out, you know, what you get in the grocery store pre-made. So yeah, so a very good point for asking that. And the last snack here that I wanted to show you already made, and there's other snacks on your handout there. It's really good. So who likes chocolate? Okay. Well, we have here, so I'll have you put it together. Sure. So Gail's going to put it together here, but this is a delicious one. So it's got peanut butter, just a tablespoon of peanut butter on chocolate rice cakes. Those are at Target, sometimes Hy-Vee. I can't really find them lately at Walmart. But, and they don't really have a lot of fibers, so don't think that you're getting a really super high quality whole grain source. They're, you know, none of the rice cakes are like fabulous, like whole grain sources. You'd be better off having brown rice, but it's a good carrier for the rest of the things. So, and we want that crunch. So she's adding the blueberries there, you know, like 1 to 2 tablespoons of blueberries there on top. And then we're going to sprinkle on some chocolate. And it only takes a little bit. Like these were that was like half of a chocolate bar that I chopped up. And I mean, you only need like a really little bit that I just chop up on the cutting board. And you could just make a little container that you have that you just sprinkle on as your go-to snack. Again, once you figure out something that you love, that you're like, oh, this is good, I'm marking this down, then I want you to think about how can I break it down to make it super quick and easy for me to have on hand. Because you have about 20 seconds when you're in the mood for something and you're getting something in your hand to eat. So if it, you know, putting this together, if you have the things together, at least the blueberries right there and the chocolate chopped up, and even the peanut butter, if you want to use, again, peanut butter with peanut butter powder, just make sure it's only peanut flour. It doesn't have a lot of other things added to it. If you have that already, because you can make that up and have that for 4 or 5 days made up, the peanut butter with the water and a little bit of, some people add a little bit of artificial sweetener there. But have it ready and have it in that space in your refrigerator that you see when you open it. And you're like, ooh, rice cake with blueberries and chocolate. I feel like that right now. So, you know, make it easy so that that's what you're going to lean towards rather than some of the other things that manufacturers are vying for our attention to eat. So, okay. So we're going to taste these. I'll have you then Gail put together the other one for everybody. And I'm going to finish with the quinoa burgers here. So we've got our flaxseed there. So I'm going to add that in there. And I've got my quinoa here. So there we go. To me, that makes more than a cup and a half, but we're going to go with it. So we're going to just mix that in there. And I usually just go with my hands. So, It's just the batter. We're just gonna mix that in. I think I've got everything, don't I? I don't quite have all the cornstarch. You don't have to get every last drop of the cornstarch, but so we're just gonna mix that in and see how, you can see little bits of the pinto beans there. That's okay. We got some of the mashed, some of it whole. Your body's going to take care of it. And taste wise, if you want it all mashed, you can, but you don't really have to. So,
Do you want to show them a piece of?
oh yeah. Okay. I'll have you actually, because my hands are a mess. Just come over here in the camera. And so we've got the burgers there. Gail's going to show you. So, those are homemade. They're burgers. You can figure out a spicy sauce that you want on there that you make with maybe some Greek yogurt or with some avocado or hummus or something like that. So awesome. Thank you. So you can see we made plenty of here. We've got plenty of batter or dough or what do you call this? Mixture. Thank you. Doesn't seem right to call it dough or batter. So there you go. So see how easy that is. And I want to know, I've got table seasoning here. You can taste it without it, but it could use some oomph. I love Dijon mustard too. A little Dijon mustard maybe spread over it. So, be creative. I love tomato paste too. So I think tomato paste, I'm trying to avoid ketchup as the go-to because ketchup's got a lot of sugar in it. And that's what we're really going, oh, I want more of that. It's really just the sugar. So, but tomato paste has a tomato plus the sweetness because they've roasted down the tomatoes there for the tomato paste. So if somebody comes up with a really good kind of mixture, let me know with the tomato paste because I think that would be great on top of these. So awesome. So action steps, flipping to, I know we're over on time, but if you can while you're here, because I know once you get off from the class, you got a long list of things and people calling you. So I want you to take just the next minute to look at the action steps and circle one, write one out. You can do other ones. If you want to work on one that you were working on last week, it's trial and error, guys. These are learnings. You might find out something is great for you to go for and build into a big habit. Start baby steps, seed it, play around with it, and then grow it once you figure out it's in the right place, it's the right thing. Or you might find out it's not the right thing to be doing right now and start another one. So everything has gems in it. And sometimes the most gems are from things when they don't go the way you planned. If you want to share in the chat here any of your action steps that you're going to set out to do this next week, or if anybody here wants to kind of shout out what their intention is.
Okay, here's the baby step. So for the quinoa burgers, my baby step is to take the quinoa from the closet and put it on the counter.
There you go. Okay, did you guys hear that? Her baby step is to take the quinoa from the closet and put it on the counter. Yes, and please, thank you. It's all these steps that we have to break down. And having the food on hand is one, so we've got to get it from the grocery store. And then we've got to make it visible. And we've got to play around with it and figure out, what do we do with this quinoa thing? So, and then we've got to figure out, once we figure out the recipes, and we want to break them down so that they're easy, so that we can make them on a rotation naturally. So, can you use no sugar added ketchup? Use your, I love that, Tamara, use your ninja label reading skills and look at it, okay? And tell me, come back to me and tell me. So the quinoa burgers are really kind of a complete food in a way as a snack because they've got fiber, protein, carb. So we don't really, so what I'm trying to say is, yes, if you could figure out a ketchup version that would work, I'm okay with that. But I don't really like regular ketchup because of the sugar in there. And I want to get you tasting other tastes other than sugar too. So just be careful about the ketchup. I just want to make sure there's not sugar alcohols or artificial sweeteners. Those aren't horrible, but again, are you putting so much that you're really just tasting the ketchup? Okay. Or are you tasting the quinoa burger? If the quinoa burger is bland, then let's work on the quinoa burger blandness. Okay. Does that make sense, Tamara? So come back, look at the label, use your label reading skills. Okay. Quinoa burgers in the fryer. Yes, you can. You can. And is it okay for diabetics to follow keto diet? Okay, great question. So keto, we don't have enough time to go fully into that, but first talk with your diabetes educator always. So second thing is, it's really hard to follow keto, period, for anybody, no matter diabetes or not. Okay, so I'm just going to put that out there. Third thing is, you might find your blood sugar control is because the protein is better. So I'm not going to dismiss that. But also, we want to look at, okay, so you have better blood sugar control with this keto. So what about the long term? That's great. You went from whatever processed kind of thing you were eating to keto. My concern with keto always is, are we having the phytochemicals that we really need to keep us healthy in the 20, 30 years down the road? So sometimes they are. Some people are getting really creative and doing things. We also need the fiber. Even though we don't digest the fiber, we need some. Now, vegetables have fiber, so some people can do keto. Most are doing fruit with it, and that has me a little concerned. But is it possible? Sure. Okay. But I do want you to look at if it's better control, great. But we want to also probably check in with the diabetes educator to make sure we're getting the fiber we need and some of those phytonutrients that you may not have heard of up until this class, but they're really important. So hope that helps. Okay. Awesome. Well, anybody else have anything to share or anything they want to put out there? Okay. Well, I think it's yes, Naomi.
I'm gonna say that the roasting the vegetables with that dip, that yogurt dip, I've been using a lot of frozen, like pre-cut frozen vegetables, just because I guess I'm lazy, but it just makes it so easy. It's just like I just dump it out and it's done, and I love it. I love it, and I expect a whole bunch of different vegetables. But that dip has been for me, that's a real game changer. I love
The
it.
Greek yogurt with the,
And I put a bunch of sugar.
that's fine.
But
Okay. So Naomi was sharing that she's been roasting veggies, loves it with the dip, and she's doing frozen roasting. I think I wouldn't even use the word lazy. I would use creative and solution focused, and hey, it works. That's what counts. So awesome. Awesome, guys. Okay. Well, I think we're over time. Thank you so much. And I think it's time for us here to eat.